Now it's been about 5 months since I've updated you on the Peninsula 500, so today I'll bring you up to speed on all the developments, including how I got my phosphate down from 0.6 to 0.08. And if you're new here and want a weekly dose of reefing goodness, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified every time I upload. I'm going to kick off with some bad news and move on to the good stuff. I've had a few losses recently, starting with my Midas Blenny Chepe. He stopped eating and started lying around in the open as opposed to hiding in his cave, so I knew something was wrong. Unfortunately, he didn't recover and he disappeared after a month or two. I'd had him around 4 years, which is around the life expectancy of a Midas Blenny, so I don't think there was any disease, and none of my other fish have showed any signs of sickness, so I think it was just old age. My Hell Freaky Firefish has also been missing for a few months now. It's possible that it's just hiding, as it was a very timid fish, but I do fear the worst. He was always hiding in caves when I had him, and he didn't really seem to be tough enough to get by, even in this fairly peaceful tank. And worst of all, my female ruby red dragonet died this week. I bought her as company for my male dragonet, and it is fair to say they got on very well indeed. More or less every night they do this mating ritual where they swim around together, then swim up into the water column. And after a few weeks it looked like she was pregnant, which at first I thought was fantastic news, until it became apparent that something was wrong. She looked really fat for a while, and after a bit of googling I decided she was egg bound, which means she was having difficulty pushing out her eggs. Now she'd been feeding for a long time, and my male has been feeding for well over a year now, so I don't think she starved, and I'm pretty sure it was the eggs that killed her. It's a real shame as they were fascinating as a pair, but I don't think I'll be trying that again anytime soon, as it wasn't very nice watching her suffer. Now every tank should have a Blenny, so I have moved quickly to bring in a replacement, and I now have a Starry Blenny. He's an algae muncher, and I chose him because I've sold my purple tang recently, which you'll know if you've seen my copper banded butterfly videos. The copper band is doing well, by the way, 4 months in and I'm feeling confident. I've also added this stunning whitetail coal tang since my last update. He's not as good as the purple tang was at eating longer strands of algae, but he constantly grazes on the rocks throughout the day, which I think will help keep algae from taking hold in the first place. Away from fish, and my In-sump frag tank isn't working out quite as well as I'd hoped it would. It's still a really useful space, and it means I don't have frag racks all over my display tank, but because I don't have any algae eating fish down there, algae grows quite readily. I do have cleanup crew in there, including an urchin, but they're just not up to the task, so I end up rotating the frags into my display tank to get cleaned by my foxface. It works fine, but it's a bit of a hassle, and I'm finding now that I've got far too many frags for this small space anyway, so I'm in the process of setting up a dedicated frag tank. It's going to be a 55-gallon water box tank, and I have some interesting ideas for it, so look out for more details in the coming weeks. Back into the tank then, and now it's time to tell you about my phosphate levels. For about 18 months I've had mega high phosphate. At the peak it got to 0.6, which is about 20 times higher than the 0.03 it should be, and it hasn't really budged below 0.4 in that time. Now at first I wasn't too concerned. My corals have grown nicely in that time and have generally looked pretty solid in terms of their colours and health, and some have even looked spectacular at times. But over time some of the colours have started to fade a little, so I decided to take action to see what happens when I bring it back down to a sensible level. Now I've always used Rowaphos to control phosphate in the past, but I wanted to find something more low maintenance, primarily because I'm lazy. At first I hoped my Cheeto bed would take care of phosphate, but frankly that was never going to happen as it's far too small a space. So I then tried carbon dosing with Tropic Marine Elimi NP and Bacto Balance. But all that did was strip my nitrates down to 0, which gave me an outbreak of dinoflagellates. Fortunately for me, my experience with dinos wasn't that bad. They spread a little but died off a few months after I increased my nitrate and installed a 55 watt UV steriliser. So after trying and failing with those methods, I decided to go back to Rowaphos. I wanted to make it as easy as possible for myself, so I bought 2 media reactors this time. This way I can change one of them every month and let the other one stay in place for a further month. Supposedly Rowaphos is 80% full after 1 month, but it does have capacity to continue to have some effect after that. So this is a good way to get the most out of it and not waste that last 20%. And now all I need to do is add a little Rowaphos to the new container, pour some RODI water over it to rinse off the fine dust, and swap out the new container for the old one. Because my phosphate was so high, I needed to take it slowly so as not to shock my corals. So it's taken me about 4 months to get the levels down to 0.08. And in that time I've had to change the Rowaphos at least once a fortnight, so I'm really hoping to get that down to once a month over time. I can't say I've noticed a difference in my corals so far, but I'll report back when the phosphate has been at around 0.05 for a good few months. Now I'm also experimenting with trace elements at the moment. I'm using the Red Sea Coral Colours program, which means I need to dose 4 bottles, so I've hooked them up to some Reef factory dosing pumps I bought to do the legwork for me. I've been dosing trace elements for around 2.5 months so far, and I can't really say I've noticed any difference in my coral colours. But I have a 6-month supply, so I'll see how things get on and I'll update you over time. Now, one of the bad things about adding trace elements at the same time as reducing my phosphate is that, if it works, I won't know for sure what it was that did the job. But I would expect my corals to start to look a lot better once my trace elements are spot on and my phosphate is down. Although I'll need to send off another ICP test soon to make sure I'm not overdosing my trace elements. Now I'm absolutely loving my tank at the moment. It's mature and easy to care for, and my corals are looking more and more like colonies every day, which gives it a much more natural look. It's taken almost 3 years to get to this point, and I still feel like it'll be another year before I can say it's finished. Now, because I'm enjoying this tank so much, I've no intention of upgrading it, so I'll have to get my new tank kicks out of the water box frag tank I'm setting up. So if you want to see more of that, make sure you're subscribed, and if you enjoyed the video today, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next week.